Hello, boils and ghouls. Arif Blackstone here with another episode of Behind the Keyboard. Today, my guest, I am so happy to say, is Jonathan Maberry. He is the author of the Joe Ledger series, Inc. He's the creator and the writer of V Wars, and also the current editor of Weird Tales. Enjoy. Jonathan Mayberry, thank you so much for coming on. This is actually you're the biggest one I've had on, biggest author so far I've had on. So thank you.
Well, at least the tallest, anyway. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Funny enough, actually, I this probably going to be the weirdest way anyone's ever heard about you before. I heard about you through V Wars on Netflix.
Well, I got that a lot. The show was very popular, even though COVID killed it pretty comprehensively.
Really?
Turns out, launching a show about a plague right as a plague is starting was not the best idea. I mean, I created V Wars back in 2011, so it's not like we knew we were trying to do something with COVID. Just timing was against us, and even though we had a ton of people watching it, they felt that it was probably not the best entertainment for people in social isolation. So we lost this. We lost it at that point.
Okay, because I was actually watching it. I started watching it last year in Mexico during COVID, so it was a great escapism for me.
Yeah, and we don't have the benefit of people here getting sick and turning into vampires. That'd be a lot more entertaining.
Definitely, definitely. So how did that all come about? Like, how did you go from, the original version of it to getting it on Netflix? Because for a lot of authors, that's the dream, to get something adapted.
Yeah, it is, and it's a long, strange trip with V Wars. And I created it as a series of shared world anthologies, right? So I would write a framing story, big framing story, and other writers we brought in to write field reports, right? And the four volumes were very popular. We had I also did two runs of the comics, V Wars comics. The audiobooks were popular, and then IDW Publishing, the company that put the books out, had launched its own media arm. I mean, they had done one film long before 30 Days of Night, which was based on one of their comics.
Mm.
And then they started focusing more on television. When Winona Earp is their most popular show. But they were also developing Lock and Key, which is still on. October Faction, which unfortunately, like my show, didn't make the cut during the COVID, slim down of budgets and everything else, and a bunch of other shows. And it was shopped and shopped and shopped and shopped. It was considered too expensive a show. The original version of it was too expensive, so that turned a lot of networks off. But then Netflix bought it and said, here's the budget, which was not the budget that we were looking for to do the big version of the show, but it was a pretty good budget. We got a great cast. I mean, a fantastic cast. And it took about 4.5 years from the time they started shopping it to the time, we actually were on TV. Probably 4 years to the point where they started shooting, and then another year and a half before it was on TV. So it was a while. And like a lot of things that get optioned, you never really expect it to go anywhere, because I have a lot of product out, what are called IPs, intellectual properties, a lot of those out, and a lot of them get optioned, but a lot of that doesn't get made for whatever reason. Sometimes it's optioned because it's really hot, and then something else, turns out somebody else is developing something else. They don't want to put a competing product out.
Yep.
Sometimes it's too expensive. Like my Joe Ledger series of thrillers, they were pitching that 2 years ago, and it got really close in a lot of different places. But the version they were pitching was going to be really expensive, like close to Game of Thrones money.
Whoa.
And and they're like, that's a lot of money. So things don't happen. Actually, Joe Ledger almost made it to ABC years and years ago. They had Jeremy Renner and Kate Beckinsale lined up for it. Jeremy is Joe, Kate Beckinsale is Grace. But the president of ABC Network here had to decide between doing that or doing the remake of Charlie's Angels, which sank like a stone.
He made the wrong decision.
Oh, they did. And, it caused a big shakeup there. I think he lost his job. So, things happen. But with V Wars, after everyone was sure, certain it was dead, then Netflix got it. We had a great season on Netflix. Um, Maybe when COVID is over, Netflix will take another look at it. If not, when the rights come back to us, Ian Somerhalder, our star,
Mm.
he and I have been talking about shopping it elsewhere, and he would
Okay.
be more involved in what would be the second season. We want it to be a lot more aggressively political, a lot, dealing more with the issues of racism, intolerance, and that sort of thing. And so the first season set us up. If we do a second season, we'll probably do a time jump and go deeper into the crisis already unfolded.
Okay. Cool. Cool. And did you approach Netflix with it, or was that one of those cases they came to you?
Well, I with a lot of these things, the author's not really that involved, especially when something that you do with a comic book company where the ownership was 50-50. They had their own marketing arm, and they were the ones out shopping it. I was not really involved in that process. It was also my first thing to get production. So the difference of involvement in my case between that show and anything else I do is quite significant. Now I will be executive producer from the beginning of the thing. Whereas with V Wars, I actually became executive producer the week or 2 weeks before it went on the air. So I was not
Okay.
involved in the story development or anything. But I have Rotten Ruin, which is in development for film with Alcon. I'm executive producer on that. I've got a TV show in Canada that they are developing based on a short story. I'd be EP on that. And another project, which is way under, it's buried under non-disclosure agreements,
Mm.
um, that is a prequel to a science fiction movie that I had nothing involved with, but I did the prequel books, which are not yet released. They will be. And those books will influence a prequel TV show. So I'll be EP on that. So from now on, I'll be more involved in the storytelling, and the actual adaptation process.
Okay. Cool. And like with all that sort of stuff, like doing the adaptation and watching it grow, the casting, all that. Do you enjoy all that? Like seeing your characters come to life?
Absolutely. One of the most real moments of my life was when I was invited up to Toronto for the table read, first table read. And so I walk in, and I had never been to a table read of any kind before. And I walk in, and there's all these actors who I've seen on other shows. Ian Somerhalder, who I saw on Lost and Vampire
Mm.
Diaries, Laura Vandervoort, who I saw on Smallville and Bitten and V,
Yeah.
and all these other actors just sitting there, and they're reading lines, dialogue, a lot of which were my original stuff in the books. It was completely surreal. I don't think I stopped grinning the entire time. And then we all went out to dinner afterwards, and it was even more surreal because I'm sitting there at the table with Candace McClure. She played Dwala in Battlestar Galactica. She was
Mm.
one of the characters, Ada Hagen. With her and Peter Outerbridge and Ian's wife, just sitting there like normal folks having food, and it was not normal to me. Not all normal since, but it was normal all the time. But I was so happy. And then my wife and I and son were invited up to northern Canada to for the first couple of days of shooting, and that was incredible. Standing there, with headphones on and watching
Mm.
monitors as the actors are doing, the scenes, just incredible. Seeing how the actors put different spins on different takes when the editor wants a different emotional note, and you can really appreciate how good the actors are when you see how they take that same line or same set of lines and then change it again based on the director's notes. It was utterly fascinating. And I made good friends there. I mean, Ian's become a really good friend. Adrian Holmes become a really good friend. And that's something, it's weird. You never quite think about. You never, you don't even think that far ahead. And, now it's like we're buds, and that's weird. So, yeah, I like every part of it.
I get that feeling. I really get the feeling that you're in the groove with it.
My happy place.
So, did you ever think any of your stuff would get to, would be ever adapted?
It's funny. You always want that, but you don't really expect it because you hear all these stories about shows that or books that get optioned and never get made. And I had a few of those myself, and I stopped being like overly optimistic that something was actually going to happen. And that's okay, because you don't want to keep getting your feelings hurt when it doesn't
Mm.
happen. The patient zero thing, Joe Ledger thing with ABC, that was a heartbreaker. That was a mess. Um, so I just stopped assuming it would happen and figured, okay, they'll option it. That's nice. My name gets around Hollywood. If anything happens, great. If it doesn't happen, great. And then suddenly I have a TV show. And now that's the thing. I will always have had a TV show and a Netflix show, and that's pretty good currency in Hollywood. Since then, I've gotten a lot more options, and those projects are getting a lot more traction. Like the Rotten Ruin adaptation of my young adult zombie books. I mean, we have one of the top Marvel writers doing the script. I can't
Whoa.
name names yet, but it's like, holy crap. And one of his films is one of my favorite Marvel films ever. So I'm pretty happy about that.
Wow,
Um,
that's
it's
amazing.
surreal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, I'm an author too, and every other author I know, when we speak, it's always that thing, oh yeah, you make it when you get the adaptation.
Yeah.
Why do you think that's the goal for a lot of us?
Well, because unfortunately, more people watch TV or watch movies than read books. So you might have a book that sells really well, and depending on what genre and what area, I mean, well, it could be anything from 500 copies to 5,000 copies. Um, and you don't really know. I mean, that sounds like a lot when you're getting royalties, but it's not a lot when you're talking about the population.
Yeah.
But V Wars was watched by 27 million people around the world. 9 million of those people watched all 10 episodes of it. That's a lot of freaking people. And, my book sales reflect that a lot of those people who'd never heard of me before went and looked me up and found out that now I have, 40 novels out and comics and all this other stuff. And they're like, wow, that this guy's an actual person. It's like, yeah.
Well,
So it is a career defining moment, not necessarily based on the quality of whatever they make, but the fact that you are now on a bigger stage. Plus, you're on the radar now of a lot more people. I mean, once they know you've had a Netflix show, suddenly you're getting invited up to Hollywood just to pitch your various intellectual properties, your IPs, and that's become kind of a fun thing.
Oh, I bet it would be. And I mean, like, going through and just, checking out everything, after V Wars, I did look you up, because I was curious about, who was the twisted mind who came up with that. And, seeing, you've done comics from Marvel, you wrote, I love the Punisher. Seeing, you wrote a Punisher one. I went out, got it, read it. It was great. You've had one of those careers that for most up and coming, and like, I'm definitely like this, you're looking at your career, I'm just sitting there going, I want that.
What's crazy about it is it's only been 14 years.
Really?
My first novel came out 14 years ago, 2006.
Oh, wow.
Almost 15. It'll be 15, I guess, in about a week and a half. But prior to that, I was writing nonfiction stuff part-time, and my day job was martial arts instructor, jiu-jitsu master, and prior to that, bodyguard and college teacher and different things. And I never expected to get to this point in my career. And then from 2006 on, it's just been, a crazy ride. I mean, I'm writing my 42nd novel since 2006.
Damn.
It turns out I like writing fast. That's my zone seems to be the fast lane, and there are other writers like that too. But in that time, I've also done over 20 runs of comics. Black Panther, Captain America, Punisher, Wolverine, some of my own stuff, V Wars. I've done about 18 or 20 anthologies now as editor, and my latest one I'm doing is Aliens versus Predator, which I'm co-editing with Brian Thomas Schmidt. And
sorry, just let me pick my drawer up from the floor on that one.
It's a fun anthology. I mean, I had edited an Aliens anthology called Aliens Bug Hunt. Brian had edited a Predator anthology. And then Fox came at us and said, "Hey, would you guys want to collaborate on a Aliens versus Predator?" It's like, yeah. And one of the fun things I had with that is my favorite of the Predator films is the third one, Predators, the one set in the alien world, Adrian Brody and so on.
Yeah.
one of the actors from that, the guy who played Hanzo, the Yakuza, has become a really close friend of mine, Louis Ozawa. And so I reached out to him and said, hey, would you want to collaborate on a short story for the anthology that's a sequel to that movie, where it's the younger brother of the character you played in that movie, who's brought to the same world. And so we wrote that for the anthology, and that was a bunch of fun.
Oh, wow. Damn. Yep, I definitely want your career now.
I tell you, if this is a dream and somebody wakes me up, I'm going to kill them. This is more than I dreamed about when I was younger. It's way more than I dreamed about. And I like some of the career highs, like collaborating and becoming friends with George Romero. I mean, that was nuts, because at 10 years old, I snuck into the movies to see the world premiere of Night of the Living Dead. And then you roll forward all these years later, and then George and I become friends. We work on a project that that turned out to be the last thing he completed before he died. This anthology, Nights of the Living Dead. And I thought I had a copy handy, I don't. But things like that, becoming friendly with Stan Lee, becoming friendly with actors that Kevin Eastman, who's one of my best friends here, is the artist who co-created the Ninja Turtles. He did variant covers for the V-Wars comics. So I have he gave me a piece of the original comic art for Christmas one year, and I'm like, there's not any part of this moment that is normal. There's not one part of it that's normal. Because at heart, I'm still a book nerd. All of this stuff is a book nerd who's suddenly playing in this world. It's like, okay, this is weird. I'm not over it yet.
So you still get out of bed with that excitement for what's going to happen.
And I never know what's going to happen, because weird stuff does come up. Part of it is you get a reputation for being easy to work with in the business. And, I've always, my business plan has always been, I won't do any project that is not a win-win for everyone involved.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to have fun. I want to try new things. And that kind of gets out. So when they look for someone who's willing to try something and they don't have anyone else in mind, they say, well, Maberry will do just about anything. He's a little weird, so try him. And that reputation has opened a lot of doors for me and made me a lot of genuine friends.
Oh, yeah. And I just can't get over the fact that, the guy who, co-created Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, that's
lives about half a mile from here. And,
okay. I mean this with all due respect, you bastard. I mean that with all respect.
I've been called worse, and it's fair enough, But he's still drawing Turtles comics, and they're published by IDW now. So we met there, and he has his drawing studio at IDW offices, and we started hanging out. And then they said, hey, we're going to get him to do variant covers for V-Wars. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? So he did 5 or 6 issues of V-Wars, and they were great covers. And for Christmas, he gave me one of the original drawings. I'm like, wow. Hell yes, I'm gonna have that framed.
Damn, that's great. So you you said that you write fast. And I mean I took your workshop, The Writer's Life, and you said that throughout the day you take 10 minutes out of every hour to do social media.
Yep.
And I wanted to ask, is that like a time 10 minutes, or is it?
Yeah, I have one of those Echo apps, those little Echo things, and I just set it to time 50 minutes, and then when that's up, it goes off. I do 10 minutes of social media, time for another 50 minutes to keep going. Okay. And it allows me to always hit my social media, because I'm very active in social media, but without feeling like constantly like I need to toggle over and look, because I know that block of time is coming.
Yep. Okay, because that's been the biggest problem I've had, and some of the other authors I know, you get sucked into it.
Oh, it's a life-sucking hole of despair. Are you kidding me? So you gotta put it in a cage. You gotta budget it. So I budget everything that I do, and it sounds mechanical, but it's really not. It's just I want to be able to do all these things without letting anything fall through the cracks. I've always got a bunch of different projects running at once, and like right now I've got I'm writing a novel. I'm researching the next two novels. Um, and I'm working on the plot with a buddy, Weston Oakes. We'll be writing 3 military science fiction novels together. So that's also in prep. So all those things need to be moved a little bit. Doing this anthology, I'm probably going to be doing another anthology next year. Got short story collections coming out,
Mm.
business deals. So everything needs to be budgeted or something gets lost. And it's a business. I'm a one-man shop. Well, I have an assistant, but it's basically a one-man shop in terms of the creativity. So if you don't plan, if you don't budget, you can't build your business the way a business needs to be built.
Mm.
And some writers are too lost in the mythology of being a writer. They want to wait for the muse and they want to sit there and that's not me. I was trained as a journalist. You go, you do your research, you write it quick and dirty, fix it, then rewrite, move on.
Yep.
But always be a business person, and that's what I try to do.
Okay. And did it take you a while to figure out, the best way to budget your time, or did that just come naturally from the journalist days?
Well, the journalism days gave me a kind of a sense of what to do, but any sane person who runs a business should be paying attention to their process, looking back at any given week and saying, okay, what part of that week was wasted because I was doing other stuff, like watching old 80s rock videos on YouTube, or which I am guilty of, or looking up for funny memes to post on social media. A lot of that is fun, but it's not really work product. So what can I cut down? What can I move to non-work hours? Of that, and also what do I do that speeds things along, because I want to be able to use that to build, to influence other parts of my job. So it's constantly a work in progress, and it's constantly changing. My business model in 2021 is vastly different than it was in 2006, because I have more to do. I have more products to support. I'm more involved in social media, and I'm also, I'm on the board of the Horror Writers Association. I'm the president of the International Media Tie-in Writers. I'm the editor of Weird Tales magazine. All of those 3 things need work time during the week too. So I've got to, I've got to be efficient, or I trip over my own feet.
Yeah. Yeah, you do sound very busy. So how much of, random day, how much is actually because you said that you've got your writing time, you've got your research you've got to do, and then you get these sort of things, doing an interview, or you've got to take a call with Hollywood. So how much of a day is devoted solely to writing?
In an average 8-hour day, which I haven't had too many days that were only 8 hours, but an average 8-hour day, probably 5 hours are writing and 3 hours of business.
Okay.
Give or take. Some days it's more. Like when I'm close to the end of a novel, I might be doing 10-hour days of just writing. But right now, I've got enough. I start my day off by trying to catch up on business as much as possible. Emails just come in, because especially during the social isolation, all the editors and agents and publishers are working from home, and they don't care about what time of day it is. So you got to do that stuff. You got to, do your social media. You got to do your PR and stuff. All those things need to be budgeted, but you still need to do a certain amount. And what I do is I calculate by words rather than minutes writing how much I do each day. So I try to do minimum of 3,000 and anywhere up to 4,000 or 5,000 words a day if I can. There are some days I can't. Like if I'm teaching a workshop, if I've been doing a lot of Zoom stuff lately. I'm on Zoom, StreamYard, or Crowdcast, probably 3 times every day. So that's 3 hours I am not writing. I've got to make sure I catch up on that word count that day, even if it means going late into the evening. But those things are important as well. Like I just recorded a couple of panels for San Diego Comic-Con, one for Dragon Con, which will have a virtual as well as physical component. Those things have to be done. They're panels, and I can't put them off because they're scheduled for the other panelists. So you make it part of your work day, and by knowing it's scheduled, there's less panic in your mind that there's too much, because you say, all right, now that hour's blocked out for that. Next hour I can do this. It's all cool.
Okay. and then like actually that makes a lot of sense because I've only been doing this since publishing since 2018 and the interviews since just the beginning of the year, but I'm still trying to figure out how to sort everything out, and then doing the big life move back to Australia, that kind of really threw everything out into chaos.
Yeah, and especially with time differences between Australia and publishers anywhere else.
Oh yeah.
Um, I have friends. I've actually my ex-wife, who's a very good friend of mine, is a poet in Australia. Anne Walsh. I don't know if
Yeah, the names.
literary.
I know the name.
She's great, published author. She actually just bought one of her poems from Weird Tales. So she's in Australia. I have a couple other Australian friends. I have a bunch of New Zealand friends. And if they're working on one of the projects with us, somehow between your weird time zone and my weird time zone, we got to figure a way to make it work. And that's something we just have to fit in. Whatever there's a hole in the day, we got to get that to be done.
Oh yeah.
But like when I moved to California, 3 hour time difference from New York, where all the publishing is, that actually there was a learning curve, just 3 hour time change.
Oh wow. Well, yeah, I experienced that living in Mexico. It's about from the east coast of the US. It's about a 1 hour difference, which that took a little bit of getting used to. And the main publisher I deal with, Severed Press, they're based in Tasmania, and yeah, living in Mexico, that took me a while to get. Okay, that's right. They're going to be ahead of me by this. They're ahead 17 hours, that sort of stuff. And I mean,
I'm not a math guy, so if it wasn't for those apps online where you can go and calculate time zones, I'd be calling people in the middle of the night. Like,
yeah. Well, that's the thing.
AM.
I understand that completely, because organizing certain interviews, when I was doing hotel quarantine a couple of weeks back, I had a couple of interviews, and trying to figure that out, that was like, oh, thank God for the internet. It makes it so much easier.
I'm so happy being a writer in the digital age. That makes a lot of things easier. Because when I was doing my magazine feature stuff, it was all during the paper age. And man, everything was slow. I mean, you send a query out, you might not hear back for months and months. You have to send everything through the mail. Photos for my articles had to be done with actual film as opposed to digital.
Whoa.
Which could eat up almost half your fee for writing the article. Now, digital cameras, it's free once you have the camera.
Well, everyone's got one of these.
Right. And, whatever software helps you fix the photos. So.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I mean, even like with StokerCon, recently, that was the first StokerCon I went to, and I literally got into the hotel, and I got a message from Lee Murray saying, "Are you at the hotel yet? StokerCon's on. Get to the bar. I'm at this bar." And it's like jet lag's hitting. Did it?
So you guys watched it from Australia?
Yeah. Yep. I watched. I was joining in whenever I could, and then for the actual ceremony, I was watching it. I was watching it in the hotel room, enjoying it. Right. I said it was my very first. Not only was it my first StokerCon, it was my first panel I ever did as well. So all that sort of stuff. I'm sitting there thinking, I'm stuck in a hotel room. At least I've got this as a way to feel connected to the outside world.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope you get back to one of the live StokerCons one of these days. We've got Denver next year. I think we're doing Miami after that, or Pittsburgh or someplace like. But if you ever get back to the States, those things are fun. And it's seeing the awards.
It's a bucket list. It's a bucket list item to go to. I've got my list of conventions I want to go to, and digital one's great, but going to a physical one would be great. And that was something I wanted to ask. You're president of the Horror Writers Association. How'd you get that job?
No, I'm president. I'm on the board of the Horror.
Sorry, you're on the board. Sorry, yep. Sorry. Forgive me. Sorry, please forgive. How'd you get onto the board? Sorry, that was the question. How'd you get onto?
A nice person asked me. Lisa Morton, who was the president at the time, asked me to put my application in for the board. And she was doing a great job as president. And I said, sure, I'll give it a shot. I didn't know where the time was going to come from to be on the board. And I'm still not entirely sure where the time comes from. But I did that, and I've been on it for about 3 years now. So I think my term is just about up.
Right.
Um, and as far as the International Association of Media Tie-in Writers,
Mm.
I've been president for a couple of years, and the founders, Max Allen Collins and Lee Goldberg, just asked me to continue on as president. So I'll be doing that. And luckily,
Okay.
I have Deb Stevenson as my vice president. It's like having Hermione Granger right there. She knows everything, does everything well, and is the nicest human being in the world. So she makes me look like a better president because she's a fantastic vice president.
So you sit there and take all the credit.
That's pretty much what it boils down to. Yes.
Well, that's
At
what
some
most.
point, I will have to buy her a very, very nice bottle of something.
But that's what most presidents do anyway. That was something. How did you get involved? Because you've written, Predator. You've done your Aliens anthology. You're doing your Aliens versus Predator anthology. You wrote the novelization for the Wolfman remake, which I love that movie.
And that was my first bestseller, first New York Times bestseller.
Okay, I've got. When I saw that you wrote the novelization, right? That's on the TBR pile. How'd you get involved with doing those?
Well, actually, it's kind of a two-pronged thing. A friend of mine had been editing an anthology of stories based in West Virginia, inspired by local folklore. And he asked me to write a story for them. And the bit of folklore that he gave me was set in the 19th century. And I'm a huge Sherlock Holmes fan. So I happen to know, to notice that was around the time where, according to the canon, the official chronology of Sherlock Holmes, he was in America. So I decided to make it a Sherlock Holmes story. So it was my first bit of media tie-in, though there's no license attached to Sherlock Holmes, but it was writing somebody else's characters. And of course, the stuff I did for Marvel, I'm writing other people's characters. 2009, I had been on Facebook talking about werewolf movies because I had the flu and I wanted to. When I'm sick, I marathon monster movies. It's a thing. I've been doing it since I was young.
Everyone does that.
And so I was asking about werewolf films, and we got a whole long conversation going. And then suddenly I get a phone call from a woman saying she's the vice president of licensing for Universal. I'm like, okay, that's not the sort of conversational opener I've heard before. She said, my assistant follows you on Facebook and saw that you were a werewolf, and talking about werewolves, and that you're a writer, and that you had werewolves in one of your books before, my Pine Deep novels. Might you be interested in doing the novelization of the remake of The Wolfman? And I'm like, I have friends who are savvy enough to prank me like this. So I wasn't entirely sure she was real. So I kind of grilled her a little bit. I was like, this is legit, right? So I eventually turned her over to my agent. They made a deal, and I got the gig. And I thought, in my naivete, that I would get to see the movie. But no, you get a copy of the script. And if you're lucky, you get to see one or two production stills, and that's all you get. So the book is different than the movie in some substantial ways. It's because I had to fill in the story, bulk up the story, because you can't just wrap a paragraph around a line of dialogue in the script and turn it into a novel. You've got to know, and it's set in 19th century England. I had to research 19th century England. I had to do all that. So I did the book, and it was, it not only became my first bestseller, it also won me a Scribe Award from an organization I had never heard of, the International Association of Media Tie-in Writers. So my first introduction was being nominated for and then winning an award for that book. After that, a lot of folks came after me with media tie-in things. Charlene Harris, for example, she wrote the books that True Blood was based on for the TV series. She reached out to me and said, would you be interested in writing a one of those stories for an anthology set in that world? I'm like, yeah. Somebody else asked me if I would do a John Carter of Mars story, a Wizard of Oz story. And I just start getting these requests. And the ones that sounded most fun, I took, including some that were not high profile, but looked fun. Like there was one called Plans 1 through 8, before Plan 9 from Outer Space. So I went up writing a Plan 7 from Sin City was mine. And another one was it was an anthology based on a really, really cheesy 1980s science fiction horror film called Chud.
Oh, yes.
Cannibalistic underground dwellers. And I got to write a Chud story. I mean, the money was low and the book didn't get a lot of attention, but that was too much fun to say no to. So I keep doing these kind of projects. Mike Mignola, who created Hellboy, reached out to me and said, would you like to write a Hellboy short story? He hadn't finished that sentence before I was saying yes.
Okay, I'm a big Hellboy fan. Which short story was it?
It was called The Duelist. It was in a collection of horrors, I think it was called, the most recent Hellboy anthology.
Oh,
It's not comics, it was print anthology.
yeah, no. Yeah, I know the one you're talking about. Okay, awesome.
Was the editor. And I had fun. You know, he basically fought, Hellboy ran into the ghost of the guy who killed Aaron Burr, which is an American historical figure. I had fun with that. I had fun with John Carter. I've got a couple other projects that I'm working on that are media tie-in, and you know, I became part of the group. You know, I became a presenter at the awards because they're always at San Diego Comic-Con, and I live in San Diego now. And so I became the presenter, and then they asked me if I'd like to become the president. I'm like, all right, you have a low bar for quality, but sure, I'll give it.
Oh,
it's been fun.
Funny enough, I was.
And one quick thing, just before you get
no, go for it.
We actually just put out an anthology called Turning the Tide, which are all media tie-in stories.
Ooh. And
it just came out, and I'll be posting an ad for this on my Facebook page soon. But it's really great stuff. Yvonne Navarre, Jeff Marriott, Weston Oakes, Max Allan Collins. I mean, it's a who's who of genre writers who did some really great stuff. So
it's kind of awesome. I mean, funny enough, I was talking to my dad, telling him I was going to chat with you today, and he, you know, anytime I tell him about an author I interview, he always does the research. And he's looking you up and goes, "Oh yeah," and then he saw this, and this is his reaction. He wrote for the X-Files. He wrote X-File books. He must be good.
That was a fun project. So IDW had the X-Files license for comics, and the current CEO, this is a few years ago, Ted Adams, was a good friend of mine. We were out to lunch, and I had already done something for the G.I. Joe anthology that Max Brooks had edited, and had done my V-Wars anthologies and some other stuff. And he said, "Look, you know, we have this license for X-Files. Do you think you might want to do an X-Files anthology for us?" I'm like, "Yeah, I would." I said, "But I have one stipulation. It would have to be, the stories would have to be canon. They would have to be officially accepted as X-Files stories." So we got Chris Carter on the phone. We talked to him. You know, Ted can make that kind of a call. And you know, Chris, it's funny, Carter's thing was, this is before the X-Files had come back for a couple seasons. He said, "Nobody remembers the X-Files." And we're like, everybody remembers the X-Files. Bushmen in Africa have favorite episodes of the X-Files. Are you kidding me? And he said, "Well, if you can get a couple of names, you know, we'll talk about it." So I spent about 45 minutes sending emails out to bestseller friends of mine, and got a yes from every single person. And we went back to Chris, and he's like, "Holy crap, that's enough for more than one book." And I'm like, "Yes, it is." So he authorized three books. So we did 3 X-Files anthologies. He went over the stories. He had to approve them to make sure they fit in the chronology of the show. And the books, you know, were hits. And then around that time, Cami Garcia, who had written one of the stories for us, Black Hole Sun, which was about young Fox Mulder, she and I started cooking up the idea of doing X-Files Origins, where there were stories about young Scully, young Mulder. They don't meet because they didn't meet until X-Files, but things that push them along their path. Again, Chris Carter gave us his approval, and gave us approval as official canon. So the story that she wrote, Agent of Chaos, and the one I did, Devil's Advocate, are the official, according to Chris Carter, creator of X-Files, the official backstory of Scully and Mulder as a teenager. And that was fun as hell to do.
Oh man, I'm totally jealous of, you know, everything up to this point. You know, everything you've talked about. Yeah, I'm jealous.
Fine, come on in, man. You know, there's plenty of open doors in this business. So.
Oh, I mean, you know, moment you said, you know, once you said, you know, Mike Mignola, I'm just thinking, oh, you know, that comment, "you bastard," yeah, that just got repeated again.
He's such a hell of a nice guy, Mike. He's a really great guy. Um, he's one of the people in the business that it's a pleasure to know, because he's smart, he's savvy, but he's also kind.
Mm.
And yeah, it's really nice that some of the people that you idolize turn out to be even better than you hoped they would be.
Oh yeah. I mean, I've been lucky enough to talk to some authors who I'm a fan of, and it totally looks like that. It's like, oh yeah, they are good people. They're not assholes. that's always the biggest worry.
It really is, because there's a lot of talk, and some validity to how celebrity can change a person, can make them very egotistical, make them very arrogant, and so on. But those it does happen, but it's a smaller percentage than people think, including in Hollywood too, among the actors and directors. There's a lot more kindness and generosity of spirit and just genuineness as people than they get credit for, because that sort of thing isn't sexy news coverage.
Yeah.
When somebody's being a bad boy or bad girl, that's what gets the news. But when somebody's just being a decent person, they don't get the press for it. But that's what I'm finding most often. Some of the folks I've met in Hollywood are genuinely really nice people.
Oh yeah. Well, with that sort of industry where you are front and center, and you are always basically on show, you would have to be, you've got to be genuine. You can't be a dick.
You should be, but there are some people who still are dicks, though. But some people really just excel in terms of your expectations. Good examples: Brent Spiner, Data from Star Trek: Next Generation. He reached out to me and asked if I'd read his memoir and cover quote it, blurb it. And it's a hilarious memoir. We had some great conversations. He's a hell of a nice guy, it was just fun to do. And the people I know who know him all say the same thing, that he's just a good guy, and it's really fun to not only meet good folks, but also, do them a solid too, like doing the cover quote, if it helps the book, fantastic.
Yeah.
And it's a pleasure to be asked.
Oh yeah, it would be. I remember many years ago when I was a little fella, my dad ordering the CD he put out, Old Yellow Eyes is Back.
Oh yeah, Old Yellow Eyes is Back. Yeah. Because he's a Broadway song and dance man.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you know him just as Data or as the scientist from Independence Day, you wouldn't think in a million years he could do that and do it well.
Yeah, really well. But he became defined by the character.
Yeah,
and of course he's in the new Star Trek Picard, which is great too.
Oh, I haven't watched it yet. Unfortunately, with everything,
good.
Yeah, I've heard it. Just I've got to catch up on so many things.
We are not short on really excellent content out there.
Yeah, that is the problem. Not only is it, you've got all the great content, whether it's books, movies, TV, it's also finding the time to experience all that while also working on your own stuff.
Yeah. It's a challenge, because I do like to binge watch. So I, sometimes I lose sleep binge watching. Like right now, I just started Sweet Tooth. I'm about 4 episodes into that.
Yeah, okay.
And Jeff Lemire, brilliant comic. So great.
And is the show living up to your expectations?
It's actually exceeded all of my expectations, because I kind of thought the comic wouldn't translate well, because the conceit of the kid with the deer horns and so on. I just didn't think they would be able to pull it off without it looking ridiculous, and it's charming instead. The actor good. They got is amazing, who plays the kid, and the whole cast is fantastic, and the show is great. I mean, of course, it's not 100% faithful adaptation, but you can't do that. It's a different medium. They did a brilliant adaptation on that, and it's four episodes in. It's definitely a 9.5 out of 10 for me.
Wow. Okay, I'm gonna have to check it out now, because that's when I was a little iffy about it.
So was I. And it's really worth it. That the pilot episode, watch when you are not going to be interrupted.
Okay.
Because it is basically a 2-character drama, the kid and his father. It is brilliantly acted on both parts.
Okay. All right. Well, it's got the Jonathan Maberry seal of approval.
But I think a lot of other people are giving thumbs up to it too. So I'm a little late to the game, but it is worth it. Really.
Well, you're actually the first person I've spoken to about it. That's the thing. So,
Cool.
yeah. So you like I saw on your bookshelf the Weird Tales, because you brought that back from the dead.
Yeah. Like this was my first issue of Weird Tales.
Yep.
With a tribute to Margaret Brundage on the cover. What happened there is, that magazine premiered almost 100 years ago. It's 98 years ago, I think it is. And it's had its great moments. Some of the Richard Farnsworth Wright run. The most recent great run was Ann Vandermeer, who was my personal favorite editor ever of Weird Tales. But there were some issues with editors in the past, publishers in the past, who are no longer with us, and also some content issues, because the racism, sexism, and homophobia of the 1930s was far more accepted, though not. I mean, it doesn't make it right, just far more accepted culturally than it is now, especially looking back on it. Some of it's really hard to reread. Some of the Lovecraft and Robert E. Howard stuff, is pretty rough in terms of sexism and racism. So when we brought it back, my brief was, I want to do it so that it reflects more than just the voices of white male writers, because there's a lot of diversity out there in storytelling, not only different genders, but also different races, different cultural backgrounds, religious backgrounds. That variety of storytelling allows such a deep pool for us to fish in. And the first issue, the very first person I contacted for when I got the gig was Victor Laval. Now, Victor had taken a bout of Red Hook, which is one of the most racist of Lovecraft's story, and he flipped it around and retold it from the point of view of the black character in a novella he did called Ballad of Black Tom.
Yep.
And that bruised everyone, because he didn't pull any punches. So I got a hold of Victor and said, look, I love Ballad of Black Tom. You bruised everybody with that. How about you come over to Weird Tales and draw blood for me? And he gave me a story called Up From Slavery that will make you bleed when you read it. It is brilliant. Jordan Peele, I believe, is looking at it right now as a possible film.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And we had so many great writers in that. Shauna McGuire is in the most recent issue. She's the top, lesbian writer in the world right now in terms of science fiction, magnet for Nebulas and Hugos and everything else. And she's a frequent flyer with my anthologies too. She's in there, and we got just tons of people in there. And we even have an original Renfield story by Dacre Stoker, the grandnephew of Bram Stoker.
Oh, wow.
And the issue I'm working on now will be our winter issue, 2 issues from now. Michael Moorcock just gave me an excerpt of the new Elric novel, and it'll be the 60th anniversary of Elric. And he was one of my greatest heroes growing up. I read every Eternal Champion book, and now it's Call Me Mike. It's like, that doesn't fit in my head. He's not a Mike. He's Michael Moorcock. Always that full name, but no. Oh yeah, Mike. It's freaky weird, man. But I love editing Weird Tales. I'm having a blast doing that.
Yeah. How did you get the job though of editing it? That's
Well, originally when they were wanted to bring it back, they had an editor who they didn't want to use. He was kind of like a legacy editor, because they didn't want to use him because he was getting old. That was the problem. He was really old, and he has since passed. So, he was an older, health impaired fella, and so they were kind of as a team trying to bring in some stories to get the magazine launched. They wanted me as one of the cover names for it, and so I wrote a Sword and Sorcery story for them. And then right after I turned it in, they said, well, we actually are looking for someone to be the editorial director. Would you mind doing that for at least an issue or two, help us get off the ground? And I said, sure. So I curated the issue. Everything that's in there was handpicked by me, the writers and so on. And the first issue was really popular, went really well. For the second issue, they said, well, we're going to make you actual editor, not editorial director. You're going to be the editor of Weird Tales. And I said, well, I'll do that if I can continue to curate the magazine. And they said, yes. So that's what I'm doing. But the way they found me, one of the the team that brought it back is a guy named Tony Eldridge, and he is a movie producer.
Mm.
He produced the Denzel Washington Equalizer films.
Yep.
Yeah, and real good guy. He's now doing a movie called The War Magician with Benedict Cumberbatch. Really great guy, and you know, his wife is an author, and I've helped her with her career a little bit, and she's, you know, become a really good friend. So he said, you know, he suggested my name to them as someone who, you know, might be willing to help with Weird Tales, because he knows my love of Weird Tales, you know, going back to my you know, childhood, and just thought I knew enough people to be able to fill an issue or two to get us off the ground. So that's how I was brought in. And then now I'm the actual editor. And we have some pretty big news coming up in the next couple of weeks too, which I wish I could tell you about, but it's going to be really big news.
Oh no,
And,
it's okay.
That'll be a lot of fun.
Oh, awesome! Because I mean, like that was something I've always wanted to ask someone, and you know, because you've curated a lot of anthologies, and I'm like with Weird Tales, it's like a mini anthology, basically.
Yeah.
What goes into doing that?
Well, part of it is you have to know like what the theme is. Like right now, we launched Weird Tales without a theme. Our first themed issue will be our 4th issue, which is the Sword and Sorcery issue. But we had to know, you know, what we wanted to do. I knew that I wanted to have diverse writers. I knew that I wanted to have, you know, not just diversity for novelty's sake, but really celebration of diverse voices. So I had to dig into who I knew that would fit that bill. And, you know, could I get that person, you know, for the different people I had on my wish list, could I get them for this issue? If not, could I possibly get them for a next issue? Would they be willing to take off the gloves and really go bare knuckle when it comes to the content, the material? So I made a list, and I reached out to the writers and was surprised that nobody turned me down. Not one person said no for that first issue. I mean, really surprising. And that first issue is killer. And then the second issue, I shot a little higher. Like I tried to get George R. R. Martin.
Mm-hmm.
He can't even finish the Game of Thrones books, let alone do a short story for me. So he said no. It was a kindly no, anyway.
Yeah.
But again, most of the other folks I asked, you know, they were all in. In fact, I was talking to my buddy Joe Lansdale, who's also, you know, he's one of the great, you know, 12 Stoker Awards, I think he's won, or something like that. And his Hap and Leonard books are among my favorites of all time.
He's his own genre.
Yeah, and we were just chatting because we've known each other for a bit, and I was telling him that I'm thinking about, you know, tapping him one of these days for a story for Weird Tales, and he goes, "Tell you what, you use flash fiction, right?" And I said, "Yeah." He says, "Give me an hour." Hour later, he gives me flash fiction for Weird Tales, you know, and it's great. It's a great piece. So because so many people love that magazine. I mean, it launched Conan, it launched Cthulhu, it launched all of these big iconic things. The first female sword and sorcery character, Gyrel of Joyry, Seal Moore, Weird Tales. Manly Wade Wellman, Ray Bradbury, they all published in Weird Tales. It has an incredible legacy. It just needed to come back with love and some consideration for the impact that it's going to make. And that's, you know, that was where I've put my focus.
Yeah. Oh no, and I mean, being involved, whether, you know, as the editor, as the curator, or even just being in, like getting asked, you want to write a story for this, you know.
That would have been enough for me. That was like, you know, I never expected to be the editor. Holy crap.
Well, no, I mean, I'm pretty sure you've got your bucket list, you know, the things on your bucket list, and that sort of, you know, becoming curator for Weird Tale, never part of that.
Writing for Weird Tales was in my top 10 bucket list. And, you know, just as I was getting my fiction career going, the magazine went out of business again. And I'm like, oh, shit. And then this came along, and it's like, it's one of those things that it's so weird, literally, that you're like, wait, is this actually happening, or am I in a coma somewhere? You know, and it, you know, I'm having a blast doing it. I'm working on 2 issues simultaneously, just about to wrap the 3rd issue, building the 4th. You know, got the Michael Moorcock story, got a James Moore story. Marguerite Reed, who was in the 1st issue, is doing another of her female characters, and Kevin J. Anderson gave me a story.
Nice.
Yeah. So, and I think Dana Fredsty and her husband David Fitzgerald are writing a story for me. So we have a pretty good lineup for the next issue. So I'm pretty happy with it.
Nice. And I mean, so then it's a similar tactic when it comes to doing like a regular anthology. You've got to make sure you've got your theme and you can, all the stories match that theme.
And don't duplicate the theme.
Yeah.
Is a big thing. It's one of the advantages with curating an anthology. You have a little more of a personal relationship with the writers. So you can say, these are themes that, like when I was doing I did one recently for kids, middle grade one anthology called "Don't Turn Out the Lights," a tribute to scary stories to tell in the dark. And it was the official tribute to that. And so R.L. Stine, Goosebumps, R.L. Stine, had written a really good story for us. It was great. And then we got another story from another writer who was in the book, but it matched the theme too much.
Mm.
And I had to ask that person. I said, Bob Stine's story just came in, and neither of us is Bob Stine. Let's face it. So can you rewrite the story and change the theme so that it doesn't follow the same note as his? And the writer's like, yeah. Because they want to be in the same book with Robert L. Stine. So
okay,
who, by the way, nicest guy in the world.
I was about to say, you went from R.L. Stine to Bob Stine, so that
Bob's been a friend for quite a while now.
You just blew my mind completely, because here in Australia we didn't get scary stories to tell in the dark. In Australia we got Goosebumps. So for me, I grew up reading Goosebumps, and that was like my introduction to horror. I didn't know anything about scary stories until a couple of years ago when the movie came out, and a friend of mine said, they sent me the book as a, just here, read the book. And I read it. I was like, okay, if I was a kid and I read that, yeah, that would be the gateway.
Yeah, because it was meant for 4th and 5th graders,
Yep.
And that was the other thing, is doing the anthology. Some of the writers who I tapped were writers who didn't necessarily have experience writing for that age group, but I wanted their voices. So they had to figure out how to write for middle grade, which is a skill set. And it's not like some people think if you're writing for kids, you're writing down. Oh, no, you're not. Kids are sharp as hell. You're writing up, but you have to write in a voice that they will hear.
Yeah.
And that is a skill set.
Yeah. And I mean, you look at, for me, the greatest kids horror writer, apart from R.L. Stine, Roald Dahl.
I wish I'd met him. Never did meet him.
Yeah. I mean, The Witches, that's one, The Witches, all those sort of books he wrote, even Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. It's horrific.
His short stories were scary as hell.
Yeah, revolting rhymes. But he never talked down to, it's written in a way that, you get it.
I learned that part of writing before I even thought about writing fiction. A little bit of backstory. So when I was going to, I don't know if they have middle schools in Australia.
What we do, we go primary school, which is years like kindergarten to year 6, and then we call it high school, which is year 7 to year 12.
Okay, well here it used to be, grade school or elementary school was kindergarten through 6th. Junior high or middle school was 7th, 8th, 9th. And then high school was after that. And they've messed with the model a little bit. But when I started in 7th grade, the librarian for that school, which was in an economically depressed part of Philadelphia, happened to be the secretary for 2 different clubs of professional writers. And she knew I wanted to be a writer. Plus I was in the library all the time. So she asked if I could get permission to go with her to the meetings. So my grandmother forged my father's signature. My father was not a big fan of literature. My grandmother was. And so the Philadelphia meetings were the Swords and Sorcery crowd. George Sithers, who was an editor, was involved in Weird Tales and other things. L. Sprague de Camp, the guy who brought Conan back after, it had been, after Howard had committed suicide in the 30s. In the late 50s, he brought them back and did all the Lancer reprints of the Conan novels. So that was the Philly crowd. The New York crowd were whatever big name genre writers, horror, science fiction, fantasy, were in New York at the time, would go to these monthly parties at this publisher's house. And this was 1970 through 73. So there was no internet. if you were launching a book and you were a big name, you went to New York to do it. If you were doing radio or TV, you went to New York for that, because a lot of that was in New York, not in Hollywood. So you'd have guys like, well, the first meeting I went to there, Ray Bradbury, Richard Matheson, Arthur C. Clarke, James Bliss, Robert Bloch, Harlan Ellison. Now, understand, I had no idea who any of these people were. In fact, when my librarian introduced me to Ray Bradbury, she's like, and this is Ray Bradbury. And I'm like, oh, are you a writer too? And everyone in the place lost their damn minds when I said that. They're howling laughing. Harlan Ellison is damn near dead from asphyxiation laughing. Matheson is like, oh my God, that's great. And Bradbury, who's one of the kindest people, he's like, I've taken a swing at it once or twice. Mm-hmm. And my librarian, by the way, was like dying next to me. So the next time I came there, Bradbury was there and gave me a shopping bag filled with his books and said, just in case you still don't know who I am, And later on, Matheson did the same. But for 3 years, most of the time I was there, Matheson or Bradbury or Ellison were there at these parties. And they knew that I was serious about writing, so they kept giving me writing advice.
Oh, wow.
And, in fact, I've got, when my first novel was out, the editor had tried to get cover quotes from Bradbury and Matheson. They were old and infirm, and the quotes came in too late for the first edition. So they included them when they did a 10th anniversary special edition. Open the cover, and there's the quotes from those two guys about my book, and mentioning that they had known me as a kid and expected me to do well, and here I am. I cried like a 2-year-old when I got those covers.
Oh, anyone would, that sort of, because most people go, oh yeah, like that, just Bradbury, Matheson, Ellison, you kind of hear those three and you're like, yep, those are the big boys. So
and what was nice about that is, like, Bradbury and Matheson, for Christmas 1973, Bradbury gave me a signed first edition of Something Wicked This Way Comes, and Matheson gave me a signed 1954 paperback of I Am Legend. And those books are not, somewhere where anybody can put their dirty fingers on them. I buy new copies of those books every year to read them and then donate them to libraries.
Yeah.
But I love those books. And Harlan Ellison gave me a lot of advice on how to structure, how to break up paragraphs so that it's not the standard model, which he was getting criticized for at the time, and now everyone does. The fragmented sentence, the broken paragraphs, so that your eye travels more actively through the page rather than scanning down and skipping. And he likens it to the difference between traditional and improvisational jazz. He said improvisational jazz engages the mind. Traditional jazz can actually fade to the background.
Yeah.
So, but it was Bradbury who told me that, when he writes for kids, he writes for his most demanding and learned audience, and he writes up to them. And I never forgot that.
No, that's actually, like, anyone who wants to write for, children, middle grade, that's the perfect advice.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone does talk down. Everyone does lower themselves to it.
And they don't sell their books when they do that, because agents are looking for the books that speak to the dedicated young reader. And that reader has read enough to be very smart and very demanding. And also, kids self-edit, self-censor. And if something's not right for them, they won't read it.
Oh, yeah.
They won't read something that's too much.
Yeah.
They don't need parents to intervene and say you're not allowed to do that.
Oh, yeah. I remember, I think I was about 10 years old or so, maybe a little bit older. And I read Raymond E. Feist's Fairy Tale. And that was one of my, more adult books. And there is that, there's the rape scene in it. And I remember let's quickly skip through it. Okay, there we go. Because it is detailed.
Yeah. And, that story wouldn't sell today, and I know Ray, he's a great guy. Even he said that.
Sorry. You know Raymond E. Feist?
Yeah, we go to the same cons all the time.
Okay. Damn.
This is an interesting thing. It's a weird side effect of the writing business that I never expected. Almost everyone whose books I read, I now know, because we're on the same panels, we go to the same conferences, we're in the same anthologies, get to know each other. Like and getting advice from people like Stephen King and his wife giving me career advice at the Edgar Awards in New York. That was surreal, but totally down to earth people. You know, R.L. Stein and just people like that they want to see other writers get ahead. They
Yeah.
really do, and they're very generous with their time. There are some writers who aren't. I won't name them, you know, but the ones I name are the people who really are interested in seeing more good books out there, because if there are more good books out there, that means more readers will be attracted to them, and rising
Yeah.
tide raises all boats.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, when I first started, because before I got into writing prose, I was, you know, I spent 10 years writing movie scripts. So my book's very, you know, like that thing about the eye dancing across the page, you know, that kind of
Yeah.
went over from that. And, you know, when I first started publishing, I talked to certain people and they're like, no, nothing, didn't want anything to do with me because they were in competition.
Mhm.
And that mindset put me off. I was like, no, screw that.
Yeah, well, Bradbury is the one that explained that to me, and I saw it for firsthand during the 2008 economic downturn. He said that there are two camps of professional writers. One camp believes that if you help someone else, they'll get your slot or they'll get your advantage, because advantages are finite. So you need to keep it yourself and focus on your own career, and that's very fear based as a mentality. And I've never believed that fear should be part of any business plan.
Hmm.
The other camp, he said, are people who believe that if more good books, if you help other writers, they'll be better writers. Hopefully, they'll get into print, and that explosion of new literature will bring people in, because you're not in competition with other people, even in your own genre. Good example of that is the weird science genre, where my Joe Ledger books are. The head of that genre is James Rollins. He took over that genre when Michael Crichton died. So he's the king of the weird science genre. He goes out of his way to help other writers in that field. He gave me a cover quote for the first Joe Ledger book.
Nice.
That kind of a guy, because he knows that when he has a dedicated fan base that they will run to get the new Sigma Force book every year, and they'll gobble it up in 3 days, even though it's a thick book. Well, that leaves a whole lot of days in the year where they want something like that. And Jim can't write that fast. So, there need to be a whole lot of other books to fill that, so that audience stays dedicated to that genre. So by helping other people in, it's also helping himself. It's altruism and generosity in very harmonious lockstep. So it's great.
Oh yeah, no. And I mean, I did this with Edward J. McFadden, and he said, you put out a book very similar to my book, fine. My readers will then read your stuff, and your readers will they're going to go after my stuff. Everyone wins.
Yep, that is the point.
Oh yeah, and anyone who kind of sits there and goes, "This is mine," all the rest of you go away. That's just there's too much energy wasted on it.
It's silly. It's also getting in your own way, because if you're closing out people who are going to expand your genre, you're diminishing your genre. There's no part of that makes good business sense.
Yep.
Aside from the basic generosity of it, it's just bad business. Why do something that is provably bad business? It's like, what the hell's wrong with you?
Yeah, but I mean, some people have their heads so far up their asses.
They do, and they are afraid because they see things get tight, and they assume that they've got to clutch onto something, but it's not that. It's not how it works. It's not how it heals. It's not how the economy gets better.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. So let me try that again, please. Yeah, I think I went a little bit too Australian. You write weird science. You've got your middle grade horror. You do write horror as well. When it comes to the horror stuff, what do you do, or what do you try to do to make it consistently fun for you to write?
Well, a lot of it deals with the research that I do. Like my first novels were straight horror: Ghost Road Blues, Dead Man's Song, Bad Moon Rising, the Pine Deep trilogy. Straight horror: vampires, werewolves, ghosts. Yep. And I what made it fun originally, what actually drew me to writing it, was I didn't want to use any of the standard Hollywood versions of those monsters. because they don't bear any resemblance to the folkloric versions that people used to believe in. There are hundreds and hundreds of vampire species around the world in different belief systems. None of them resemble a pale-faced Eastern European gentleman in an opera cloak. Not one of them. There are a lot of werewolf subspecies out there. None of them are killed by or are afraid of silver bullets. They're, in folklore, any bullet will kill a werewolf because they turn into wolves. And a lot of the stuff that's built up, like vampires being afraid of sunlight, being killed with a stake, not being able to enter unless asked, none of that was in folklore. A lot of it was invented for by Bram Stoker for Dracula. So I had done a series of nonfiction books on the folklore of the supernatural predators of different kinds. So I wanted to use those kinds of monsters because the reader will not know what to expect. And also the characters in the story, and this was the fun part, once they begin to realize that they're dealing with vampires, everything they know about vampires would have come from watching movies and TV, which means they are not going to be able to fight the vampires that are actually after them. And that made it a lot of fun to take the trope, set it up, and then smash it down and have something behind it that's different, weirder, and scarier. And so that was a lot of fun. With all my with the other horror pieces I've done, I always look for something unusual about it. Like my latest horror novel, which was Ink. That one is a type of monster that's inspired by what's called an essential vampire. Essential vampires are those that feed on things other than flesh or blood, life essence, breath. There's an Arabic one that feeds on faith. All these different types of essential vampires. So I had one that fed on memories. If you have a tattoo tied to a really important memory and he brushes it, the tattoo fades from you, appears on him. He relives the intensity of those memories, feeds on them, and then the memory is gone from you forever.
Oh, that's scary. That's really good.
Yeah, so for that, I needed to do research about tattoos. I don't have any tattoos. I did a lot of research for that. There was an LGBTQ subplot dealing with a lesbian falling in love with a bi-curious woman who otherwise defines herself as straight. I'm a straight white guy, in my 60s. That is not my experience anyway, and I don't want to write a cliched version of it. So I interviewed dozens of women whose experience, fits within that, so that I would write a version faithful to reality as opposed to assumption. That kind of research is fantastic. It not only deepens your understanding of the world, it enriches your perception of the world. The world is much more interesting when you find out how it really works. Rather than just living within your own assumptions, because that's what you've come to believe as opposed to know. And so that stuff keeps the research and the writing extremely fresh. And that makes it fun. With my Joe Ledger series, which are weird science, but some of the books have horror elements to them. Those books, the research is what I live for. I'm a science junkie. So, if I'm doing something dealing with zombies, the first book, Patient Zero, deals with genetically engineered zombies. I talk to molecular biologists, geneticists, epidemiologists all over the world, like top class guys, who loved talking to a writer, even though I wasn't famous at the time, because they're so happy that somebody wants to get the information right. So they'll tell you tons of stuff, more than you'll ever use in the book. And that's just like giving a junkie as much crack as they want, so there's no part of it that's not fun. Plus the actual physical process of sitting down and building characters that you believe are real people is great, because if it's just the action driving the story, who cares? But if the characters are believable, then you feel their emotions, and then the story becomes completely alive for you as the writer, and hopefully for the reader.
Okay. And how much time do you spend on researching before you start?
Well, I've gotten very efficient with my research, because it's, I'm now writing my 42nd novel. So, I've done research for 41 previous novels. What I do is something that I kind of learned in journalism school when I was studying to be a reporter, which is the one thing I've never done in writing, is be a reporter, but I went to school for it. So what I would do is if like the next book I'm writing, next Joe Ledger book I'll be writing is called Discord. It deals with sound-based weapons. And
Ooh.
there's a lot of technology out there for sound-based weapons. And there's also a lot of conspiracy theory about sound-based weapons. So I look for articles in which experts on both sides of the issue are talking about it. I cut and paste the name and the credentials of that expert and go look for them online, what organization, university, or whatever they belong to. Every single one of those organizations will have a contact page. So I reach out and say, I'm a novelist writing this. I would like to talk to so-and-so, ask them a few questions via email. Can you pass this along? Very rarely do they say no. But just to be on the safe side, if I need one quote, I ask 5 people. Sometimes I wind up with 5 quotes. And I'll find a way to work that information into the book and thank them in the acknowledgments page. But so if I'm like, since I won't be writing Discord, that book until probably mid-fall, because I've finished this book and I have to do another epic fantasy. So mid-fall, I'll be starting that book. So between now and then, I'll have heard back from these experts. I'll have maybe had follow-up questions, or they may have recommended a colleague who is more specialized in a certain area. So I'll be able to do all that as a series of emails between now and then. So by the time I sit down to write the book, I will have had months worth of research on that, and also on other projects, because once you know how to find an expert and reach out to them, it's so quick in the digital age. So sometimes my 10-minute breaks for social media, I'm using it to research and contact people who are experts, who then also become friends. I have quite a few of these guys who will reach out to me when something weird or new is happening in their field, and like, oh, this is cool and disgusting. This is a new disease. And they'll send me with pictures and everything else. I have learned not to open these on airplanes if there's somebody sitting next to you, or any crowded space. But it's great because I'll get cutting edge information that hasn't reached the public, or probably won't for a year or so, but it'll be in my novel next year. It makes me look very predictive because I'm getting information that is so new, the scientists themselves are buzzing about it.
Okay. Wow. That's actually really good to know about with research, because
it's easy to replicate.
Oh yeah. And I mean, once you figure out, how to do something, you can just then do it, apply it again and again. Awesome. Because
and actually one of the two of the experts from who I've been using have now managed to work their way into my books as characters. Dr. John Samar, who is a world-class expert in epidemiology, who I started using because my buddy Scott Sigler was using him first. And I saw him on the acknowledgments page. I said, hey, you have this guy's email address? And I reached out to him, and I've used him in every one of the Joe Ledger books. And starting at about the 7th book in the series, he started being an actual character, the guy that they called for this type of information. And then for my Pandemic, a comic book series, there was a molecular biologist, Ronald Coleman. And I've been on a panel with him. It was actually he and I, and Kevin Eastman, Ninja Turtles artist, and a virologist. We were all on a panel together about how comics use real science. And we swapped cards, and I started using him. And then now he's an ongoing character in both the Pandemic series and the new Joe Ledger books.
And I mean, that's got to be like for them, they must be so thrilled with that.
Yeah, and like John gets invited to Comic Cons and other genre cons now as a panelist, because he's the guy that Scott Sigler and I both use, and we always thank him for it. So it is kind of cool.
As you said, rising tide lifts everyone, even in completely different fields. So you do workshops, you do help other authors. I mean, you're taking time out of your day for this. So if someone, came up to you and said, I've read your stuff, I'm a massive fan, you've inspired me, I want to become an author, what's the one piece of advice that you give them?
Only one piece of advice. I'm going to break the rule and give you a couple different pieces. One is,
you can do top 5 if you want.
Finish the damn Most people write and do not finish a book. Finish the friggin' book, and don't rewrite it until you finish the first draft. No matter how ugly, clunky, or awkward that first draft is, finish the book. Buy yourself a present when you have finished that first draft, because you have done something less than 1% of writers will ever do. That it's a big thing to finish the first draft. So that's one thing. Second, learn the difference between publishing and writing. Writing is an art. It is the intimate conversation between you and the reader. Publishing is a business whose sole concern is selling copies of art. They have no obligation to buy your book unless they think they can sell a lot of copies of it. And no matter how good your book is, if a publisher doesn't think they can sell a lot of copies of it, they're not going to buy it. Understand that. And it may be that you have to look more aggressively for the kind of publisher who will buy your book, because a lot of it's based on their own track records, their own market analysis for what they've done. Understand the business part of it, and it's easy enough to do. You can subscribe to Publishers Weekly has several free newsletters that are excellent. They give you an idea of the trends, and not that you want to follow trends, but just how the business is working, who's doing what in the business. Publishersmarketplace.com has not only sends an email out with all of the new book deals, which means you can see which editors are buying and which agents are representing. You also see what's selling right now, and they send a great business newsletter too. Learn the business. I did not go to school to learn publishing. I did not take any publishing classes. I learned by subscribing to newsletters, reading magazines, talking to other writers, and building on that knowledge as I made baby steps into publishing. But the fact that I do understand publishing has served me very well, because if you don't understand how publishing works, you're at the mercy of people who do understand. And a publisher can be a really great person, but they're going to slant a contract in favor of their company, of course. So you need to know how to get the right kind of agent, how to work with that agent, how to read a book contract, how to write a pitch, all the things that are not writing the novel, but still things that you have to learn, but they're all learnable. Absolutely all learnable.
Oh yeah. And I mean, on your website, I know on your website, because I checked it out, you've got a section for authors that include,
free stuff for writers.
Yeah. All the stuff about, how to write a pitch and all that, which actually, when I first started trying to pitch books, I actually did go to that, and it's helpful.
That query letter has been tweaked by dozens of agents and editors. So it's tweaked to be the kind of business instrument they want to see come across their desk. Because you're pitching a business product. You're not sending a love letter to your novel when you pitch to an agent. And a lot of people don't know that. And it's okay they don't know it, because it's not, you're not born with the knowledge.
Yeah.
So learn from people who have figured it out. That's why I have it up there. So writers can write a better query and at least get read by an agent.
Oh, yeah.
That's a big thing.
Yeah. And I remember that you said that, any advance offer that's over $1,000 US, that's when you need to go and look for an agent.
Yep. They won't take anything less because they work on 15%, and less, they don't want to work for pocket change. They can, if you have an offer for 1,000, they may actually be able to up that offer. I've seen that a number of times. And they can sometimes talk you out of taking too big an offer, which can be a problem. If you get a mega offer, it's so hard for that book to earn out. It's better to get other rights, like a bigger percentage of royalties and so on, and take less up front, because your book will earn out and it'll be successful as soon as it earns out. And then all those other rights that you swapped, by taking less money, start, really thickening the envelope when it comes to that royalty check.
Yep, that makes a lot of sense. I'm nowhere.
Also, if the book doesn't earn out, you're seen as a failure. It can kill your whole deal, even if they're the ones that gave you too much money for your book up front.
Okay.
It happens a number of times.
Okay. Yeah, I'm nowhere near that sort of level yet. It's good to know.
When you get there.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing.
I wish I'd known it at the beginning. I wish I'd known it at the beginning. When I was doing nonfiction books prior to becoming a novelist, I got into a couple of handshake deals without contracts or agent. and that went badly for me. And that's why I started learning the business part of things. I didn't want to become the victim of somebody else's bad practices.
Yeah.
So you learn the business, and it also helped me find a better agent because I knew that I was looking for someone to be a business partner, not someone I wanted to put on a pedestal because they're an agent, and not someone that is just breaking in and had no set of contacts. And the right business letter makes you look so professional, even if you're not yet a published author. Just because you're not published doesn't mean you're not professional.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Because I mean, like you said it earlier, that new authors or even some other authors, they mythologize the whole thing. They also do the same thing with agents, which
they really do.
Yeah, which is, I mean,
it
it's
makes
strange.
agents feel really awkward when somebody is so deferential to them. It's like, oh my God, they're like afraid, and it because most of the agents, they're not the celebrity superstars. My agent, I love her. She's top of the game, but she's basically a book nerd. She's well, when I first met her, she's a lot more confident now, but she was kind of gawky and nervous because she doesn't deal with the public. She deals within business. And putting her on a pedestal makes her just feel weird because now she feels like she can't have an honest communication with you.
Yeah.
And editors the same. My editor for most of my adult fiction, Michael Homler, great guy, really hates it when somebody puts him on a pedestal because he doesn't know how to react to that. He wants someone who's going to be able to talk to him like a business person, still be enthused about books and the art of it, but talk to him like a business person because that's his game. That's his area of genius, and he wants to be able to navigate in those waters without having to solve your emotional problems of a disproportionate relationship.
No, I get that, and I'm pretty sure you've had that where you've gone to a convention and someone's put you up on a pedestal as well.
Yeah, it's not a comfortable place to be. I don't like. I mean, getting praise for your books is one thing, but people treating you as if you were born a celebrity and everything you say is perfect and everybody, none of that's true. I'm just another guy who happened to have gotten here, but it doesn't make me better or worse than anyone else. And I don't want there to ever be a perception that I'm better in any way because I'm more successful. That's not reality.
Oh no, of course not. And I mean, I'm going to be 100% honest. Every time I do an interview, I always learn something new from whoever I'm speaking to. And, I've been making notes about certain things you've said. And I've, I've got a little notepad here, and I've got a lot on there from you. Thank you so much.
Sure. And you'll pass a lot of this down to the people who start reading read your books and invite you on their shows,
well, hopefully one day.
I see no reason not to. I mean, it's one of those things where, it is a community. We're all together helping to raise the next generation of writers. And we want to do that, as I mentioned earlier. And you don't do that if you're putting on airs and trying to be this aloof bestseller,
I'm pretty sure it would be hard to come off aloof wearing one of those shirts. I'm pretty sure it would be hard.
These are pretty non-aloof shirts. Yeah.
Oh, when I was younger, I was a teenager. I wore that sort of shirt every day back when I was a teenager. So it kills all sense of that.
Yeah, I actually started. It's funny. I started wearing this when I was working as a bodyguard because it's loose and so on, and you can hide a handgun, which I had clipped to my belt, and you didn't want the handgun to show. So on jobs when I was not required to wear a suit, I wore Hawaiian shirts, and it just became a thing for me. And now that I live in Southern California, I have like 300 of them.
Wow.
I need an intervention at some point. No question about it.
Nah.
Or a 12-step program or something. But I love my Hawaiian shirts, and this company makes the best. Big Fun Shirt Company, and they make the best shirts. So I love Hawaiian shirts. And if I'm doing a gig where if I'm doing a keynote speech, all right, I'll put on a shirt and a vest, and like a dress shirt and a vest, and not be casual guy, but otherwise for the rest of the convention, I'm the big guy in Hawaiian shirts.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And you go to a convention, there's only going to be probably one guy wearing that sort of shirt. So you're easy to find, and it is part of your brand.
And I'm 6'4" too. So, I tend to be, I have been told, people have said, look for Bigfoot in a Hawaiian shirt. And on that description, they have found me.
Yeah, but that would be pretty hard to miss.
I got no stones to throw. I'm tall, hairy, and Hawaiian shirts.
Man, I wish just one day someone would ever do that sort of description for me. That's like, that's also the perfect description for a character in a book. You've got to start writing the Hawaiian wearing Bigfoot now.
Yeah, it's funny. I was on a panel the other day, and actually, it was being interviewed on the radio the other day, and one of the guys who was interviewing me had a Bigfoot Hawaiian shirt. I now covet that shirt. Because he'd heard me say that before, and he stood up and he said Bigfoot. I'm like, oh my God, that's the best Hawaiian shirt. So I need to get one of those.
Well, maybe talk to your company, just, send them, hey, I've got 300 of your shirts.
I have sent a note to them. I'm waiting for a reply. I think what they'll say is, if you find the fabric, we'll make the shirt, because they hand make the shirts.
Oh,
so I'm looking for the fabric. I'm looking for a bolt of the fabric.
Okay. Well, you can find it. You can find almost anything nowadays on the internet. So.
Yep, you can.
Yep. So I don't want to take up too much more of your time. So where can everyone find you? The millions of people who are going to watch this, where can they find you?
Well, I'm actually pretty easy to find if you spell my name right. It's Maberry. People want to put the Y in there. They really feel that urge to make it MAY, but it's MAB. It's the Scottish spelling. The English had to put the Y in there so they can know how to pronounce it. But the Scots know that the E after the B makes the A long. We spell it correctly. It's my take on it anyway. But so if you look up jonathanmaberry.com, you'll find my website, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. I'm on all of those, and I'm on them every day. So I'm pretty easy to find. And there's a lot of fun stuff that happens. Plus, I do a weekly Ask Me Anything on Thursdays at 4 p.m. Pacific time. On Facebook, I do an Ask Me Anything, and we get between 4,000 and 6,000 people tuning in and asking questions. And I always pick my two favorite questions each week, and those people get some, like a signed first edition or some other prize that's kind of fun. I think the one I'm giving out next week, 2 signed copies of V War's God of Death, a standalone comic we did just before the show came out, and they're signed by me and Ian Somerhalder.
Oh, wow.
So that will be the prizes for next week's Ask Me Anything. So you can find me online and just come and have some fun. I'm usually making some goofy, sarcastic comments on my social media. Most of what I put up there is not about my books. It's about, like I'll be asking people about their books. I'll be asking people about, tell me something good that's happening. Or I'll just put up a funny meme. Tomorrow is my dog's birthday, so it's going to be all about Rosie.
Oh.
She's 10. She has more fans than I do, I'm pretty sure.
Everyone gravitates more to the fur babies.
Yeah, and I even have one of these shirts that looks exactly like my dog. I don't know how they found that, but it's my dog on surfboards.
Oh.
And in fact, one of my fans did a hand-carved sculpture of my dog with tentacles. Clearly, she had just defeated Cthulhu. So, but tomorrow's Rosie's birthday, so my social media will be about dogs. But yeah, come and follow me, have a little fun. I promise not to do the hard sell to you very often at all.
Well, that's good to know. And I'll put links to everything in the description below. Jonathan Maberry, thank you so much for coming on and having a chat. This was amazing.
Oh, this was great. You asked great questions too, man. This was a lot of fun.
No, thank you. Thank you. I try to keep it light and, always target towards whoever is on.
And you don't ask the same questions I've been asked every time. And that's a really good thing as an interview. That's going to do you well, because it shows that you're thinking the next thought rather than the obvious one. So it'll probably inform your fiction as well. So good job. No,
thank you so much. And further down the road, I'd love to have you come back on.
Actually, I've got a couple of things coming up that currently are under non-disclosure agreement, but when they get announced, I'll be looking for some platforms to shout about them.
Yep. So let me know, and I'll definitely have you come on. I'll definitely by that time have more questions to ask.
And I would like to make one personal pitch, because I do have some books coming up. So I just want to real quick.
Yeah, go for
The
it.
next Joe Ledger book comes out July 13th, Relentless. For those people who read the last one, Rage, and who sent me hate mail because of the last chapter, and there were a lot, don't worry, this book addresses those issues in a pretty gruesome way. That's coming out July 13th, print, ebook, and audio. And then I have the Aliens versus Predator anthology coming out in November. And I have 3 short story collections coming out this year. I have a zombie short story collection called Empty Graves, which is basically collected all my zombie short stories. That's coming out September 1st. I have a 2-volume Joe Ledger short story collection coming out probably November, December. We don't have a date yet. And those are the 3. Those are the 3 that are coming out this year. So it's going to be the next few months are going to be busy with new releases, and I'm going to be having a lot of fun.
No, awesome. No, good. I'm not going to say good luck because you don't need it.
we all need good luck and good wishes, so I'll take it.
Definitely. And I mean, I'm definitely going to pick up the zombie anthology one because you binge monster movies, I binge zombie stuff.
Oh, so well, this might amuse you. The introduction is by Ken Faree.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, Peter from Dawn of the Dead, and we have cover quotes from. Let's see, who's cover quotes? Max Bralier, who has a show on. Judith O'Day, who played the original Barbara, gave us a nice quote too. And I think, and also Patricia Tallman, who played Barbara in the remake. So it's nice that they all, took some time to read the book and gave me some nice endorsements. That's pretty cool.
Oh yeah, that's what things always got to be nice. I mean, I've only got one book with some blurb quotes, and that was from other authors, and that's always like a bit of a buzz.
Yeah, it definitely is. I just got my first 2 for my epic fantasy novel. I'm really, really jazzed about that. Kevin J. Anderson and James Rollins gave me cover quotes, and Michael Moorcock is actually reading it right now, which gives me hives.
Oh,
I really hope he likes it.
Well, remember, he's not Michael Moorcock. He's Mike for you. Remember that.
Yeah, he's Mike, but he does not give cover quotes often. So he has to really like the book, and he has turned down books by friends before. So
okay.
I'm hoping he likes the book. I'm hoping he enjoys it, because before I even met him, became friendly with him, I actually had, when I was writing the book, dedicated the book to him, and he doesn't. I'm assuming he has since seen the dedication, but it was something I did before I was in contact with him. So fingers crossed.
Well, good luck. I hope he does enjoy the book and gives you a great blurb quote for it, because that would be a bucket list item for you.
Yeah. Way high on the list.
Yeah.
So, and no matter where you are in your career, you still fanboy out at times.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I will totally admit, when I sent you an email asking to come on and you said yes, I was in the hotel room and I got up and did a little dance. So, yeah.
Oh, I can appreciate that. I've done the Snoopy dance a few times too, and recently. Yeah, so we're all still book nerds at heart.
Oh, yeah.
I hope we never stop being.
I probably never will, because I'm a full blown geek nerd, however you want to call me. So I'm proud of all that. So getting to do for me, writing a book, coming up with an idea for a book and pitching it and getting, yep, here's your contract. That's like awesome. This is the best job in the world. I get to create this.
Yeah. I mean, we get to play in our imagination all day long, get paid for it. I mean, there's no downside to that.
Exactly. So. Well, I will let you go, sir, just so you can, get back to your imagination and your day. Thank you so much once more for coming on. This was amazing.
Oh, this was a whole bunch of fun. Thanks for inviting me. This was quite a lot of fun. I can't believe it was an hour and a half went by like that. That was
yeah.
great.
Oh, that's the thing. I have this thing where if I'm having fun, I know you're going to have fun. That's the big thing. And yeah, I was keeping track of the time, and I'm like, yeah, let's just keep going a little bit longer. I'm having too much fun.
Yeah, it was great. So I'd love to come back, and I feel like I've made new friends. So that's great.
Oh, definitely, definitely. And yeah, I'm happy to have you on any time. So
Cool.
you got anything new coming out you want to come on and talk about? Hit me up. You're definitely welcome, man.
Sounds great. Maybe I'll come back and we'll talk about zombies next time.
Yep, definitely. And then we can do another one about monsters. I'm always up for that.
Yeah,
Those conversations.
I'm definitely, a zombie addict. So
Well,
yeah.
you got to know and be friends with George Romero. I can spend a long time just talking about that. There's a lot there I want to ask. So
Or some cool anecdotes. Yeah, we'll do a zombie talk when maybe in September when Empty Graves comes out.
definitely. Okay, definitely. I'm going to hold you to
And
that,
I'll make
sir.
sure. Yeah, I'll get a PDF review copy for you so you can read it.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, definitely. That way I can ask you all the pertinent questions. That would be awesome.
And hopefully enjoy the stories. Fingers crossed.
Oh, I'm pretty sure I will. And if I don't, I won't tell you.
Sounds good. All right, man. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks again.
Yep, definitely. No, thank you. Have a good one. And a very big thank you to Jonathan for coming on today. You can find links to his work in the description below. If you have any questions or any authors you'd like to see on the show, please feel free to put them in the comments below. Once again, I'm RF Blackstone. This is Behind the Keyboard, and as always, boils and ghouls, stay spooky.